addition, we'll have the opening prayer by Christy Kern, Mona's niece, the obituary by Paul Motz, Mona's brother, and then we have a couple of thoughts that Mary Motz is going to read from Larry Motz, one of Mona's brothers, and then Susan Arnold, a niece of Mona, so we'll add that into the program here. After Mary shares those thoughts with us, we'll have the musical number by the great nieces and nephews, I Am a Child of God, scriptural thought by Deanne Stevens, Mona's niece, and then a song Amazing Grace accompanied by Emily Motz, and then I'll give the closing prayer and dedication. So we'll follow the program as outlined.
What can I say? Mona Janet Motz was born on December 16th, 1941, here in the big city of Alamosa. The 1940 census is a lot different than it is now. She was taken home to 111 Bell Avenue over yonder. She had an older brother 10, and she had an older brother 13. And that was in a small 3-bedroom house on Bell Avenue. And I think back and I wonder how they did it. I need to talk to somebody and ask them how those arrangements were made. It was really, really something. She went to, like myself, she walked down to Central School, 3 blocks. I don't know if Mrs. Oakes had Mona in school or not. Did you? You did?
I did.
Okay.
She looked great.
And she had me too. After Central School, she, well, actually it was probably in about 6th grade that I think she developed her love for horses and I think medicine, because one of the stories that I heard was my mother was always the last one to go to bed. And one night, while everybody else was in bed asleep, and Mona was up wandering around. And my mother went in and said, "What are you doing?" And she was sleepwalking. And she said, "I'm picking horse pills off the wall." So she picked horse pills off the wall at an early age. After Central School, she ended up at Evans. And then after Evans, she was at Alamosa High School. She graduated in 1959. She played in the band. Some of you can probably remember being in the band with Mona. She played the trumpet, and when I remembered that, I remember she used to get called on to come out here for duty on the 4th of July and to play taps for folks, and she loved that. After she graduated from Alamosa High School, she went to Colorado State University and graduated with a degree so she could teach, and she moved from there to Port Orford, Oregon, where she taught physical therapy and whatever else you have to teach, I guess, with physical therapy for a few years. When she went out there, her first car was a 1954 Chevy. And then her first new car was a 1963 Corvair. And she loved that Corvair. And so I recently acquired a 64 Corvair, and I had to bring her out here in the Corvair to her final resting place. I hope she enjoyed that. Actually, and the Corvair, being in Oregon, she and the Corvair actually got swept into a river, and she got saved with the Corvair too, which is another story. After Port Orford, she decided medical school was the thing to do, so she ended up in Kansas City. Was in Kansas City for over 4 years, I think it was, and got her doctors. After that, she went back to Portland and opened up a general practice in Portland, and she was in Portland for a number of years. And then she decided she really wanted to do surgery, so she went from there to Trenton, Michigan, where she had a residency in OB/GYN surgery. And when she got done there, that's when she ended up going to Oklahoma City and staying down there. Laid in bed last night trying to think of all the things you should or maybe shouldn't say about a person. And I couldn't decide if she was complex or extremely simple. And the reason I say that is because medicine was clearly the #1 thing in her life. and she loved delivering babies more than anything in the world. One of the first things we learned when we went down there is you don't ever count on her to be anywhere, anytime, because if she had to go deliver babies, she was gone. And so when we went down there to visit, we never planned anything around her because it was just impossible to do. You know, as often as not, we'd go to bed, she'd still be up. We'd get up, go downstairs, she'd be drinking coffee, having gone and delivered 2 babies before we even got up. So that was clearly her number one and her calling in life. Number 2, I guess, were her horses. She loved horses, like I say, from day one, which is, I think, is a little unusual because my grandfather Kenton on my mother's side lived in Lahare, and he was a farmer, and he never had horses. We clearly never had horses, but she just loved horses. And so you can see her picture is with her favorite thoroughbred. His name is Kuwaiti Brass, and he was her #1 thoroughbred, and she loved him to death. And he also bit Jeffrey on the shoulder really bad one time. And she loved her dogs. She loved dogs. She had a great sense of humor. You know, when we'd get together, stories would come out, and we would laugh until we cried. I mean, just funny. I'll tell a quick one because it's a wonderful story. She loved dogs. Her favorite dog, Bracy, was a terrier, a water dog terrier that duck hunters used to get their ducks out of the water after they were shot, because they were supposed to have what they called a soft mouth, and so they would pick the ducks up and back. Well, Bracy was just a puppy, and the man she got him from offered to train him. And she took him up on the offer, and so he came by and picked her up, Bracy up as a pup, took her out and was training her in the field and brought her back. And she had scratches from running through the bushes and brambles on her stomach. And the trainer said, you know, I'm sorry, you know, you're a doctor, is there something we can do? Do you have an idea what we could use for this? And my Mona said, absolutely. She said, let's go to the drugstore and we'll get some stuff. So they went to the drugstore and looked up and down the counters and couldn't see what Mona was after, so they went back to the pharmacist. And the pharmacist came and said, may I help you? And Mona said, bag balm. And he said, first name or last? I guess people in Oklahoma City don't. You would think they would understand, but bag balm, first name or last? Anyway, getting back to nature, nurture, complex, simple. I think in my mind, I would go more with the simple. And the reason I say that is because she used what I think the correct term is attribution. An attribution is where you take yourself and you apply it to other people. Mm-hmm. So with her being that kind of a person, she never had any guile. She was never mean. She was not haughty at all for being a doctor. And she had no mistrust of anyone, and she never felt self-important. And I think that's what she attributed to other people. She felt like other people were the same way. So consequently, she was a great, great doctor and a poor, poor business person, because she got taken advantage of a bunch. She was generous to a fault. Anyway, Mona is survived, well, she was preceded in death by her parents, who are right here. She'll be interred right next to her mother, which we think is great. She was preceded in death by her older brother Marvin, over there. She was preceded in death by a younger brother, Thomas Scott. Thomas Scott was born between Mona and myself. There's 7 years between myself and Mona. and there was about 3 years. My parents had Thomas Scott, and he's over there. She is survived by her oldest brother Arthur and his wife Linda, who lived in Boise, Idaho. Her older brother Larry and his wife Lynette, who lived in Anchorage, Alaska. And Marianne and I, who live here in Alamosa. And it just dawned on me there ought to be more of us than that. But there's no. But we thank you all for coming, and we thank you. Oh, and Mary, yes, Mary, and Gail, Mary, and also Ellie, who was her companion for years and years and years down in Oklahoma, and Lori, her daughter, who is Ellie is not doing right now. We hope she could be here with us as well. But we thank you so much for coming, and we thank you for all the love you show, not only to Mona, but to the rest of our family, and we want you to know that we love you as well. Thank you.
And he says, just some memories of my sister, Mona Janet Motz. An only sister with loving parents and 4 doting brothers gave Mona a one-up on most little girls at that time. She was a beautiful and talented young lady, full of energy with a keen sense of humor, who succeeded in everything she attempted to do in life, from selling lemonade on a card table in front of 111 Bell, winning awards and brownies in Girl Scouts, being an honor roll student all through high school, playing first chair trumpet in the school concert band, later having the honor to play first chair in a concert, first chair cornet, he says, in the Denver Symphony Orchestra, graduating from honors with a degree in osteopathic medicine. She interspecialized her medicine OB/GYN in Portland, then to Oklahoma City, where she professed that her babies were the prettiest in the world. And I heard her say that many times. I just lost it. Okay. Her long days of medical practice and surgery would finally end when she would be welcomed home by her best friend, Ellie Collier, and her other babies, the many puppies and dogs that she would rescue and give undivided love and raised thoroughbred horses, her favorite Kuwaiti Brass. I could ponder for hours recalling so many things that are in my heart and that remind me of my sister. But suffice to say that I would be just content, looking lovingly towards heaven, as will all of her family, friends, and babies, and smile and say, we will always love you, Mona. And that was from Larry. That one from Susan. Kids, and I'm going to paraphrase what they suggested, as well as some of my fondest memories of Auntie Mona. The kids called her Moan most of the time. When they were young, they couldn't say Mona. They were moaning. So that's what we called her mostly. Growing up and being a Motz, laughter was always a huge part of my life. Laughter was never greater than when the Motz children got together, especially when Auntie Moan was visiting. I looked forward to her coming, as I knew it would be such a special time together. Food, she was a great cook. Fun and laughter was the best combination of all. Auntie Moan was larger than life. The dozens or so visits with her while growing up I cherished. But the time I'm most grateful for is the years my family and I lived in Oklahoma. That is where my relationship with her grew and became stronger. When we first got word of our transfer to Oklahoma, Mike and I were in search of a place to live. After exhausting ourselves trying to figure out where and finding a home to live, Auntie Moan graciously offered the Greenbrier house to us. That was the beginning of the fun times together. I asked Kyle, Derek, and Reese, those are her children, what their fondest memories of her were, and each one brought a smile to our face. All the Thanksgiving meals together, visits to the Norman Pond, the kids spending nights and getting to sleep in the water bed, Squiggly the dog, now I don't remember Squiggly, but that was one of her dogs, and going to and just hanging out at her office. We felt like family. But now my selfishness comes out. I'm mad at her. I look forward to being back in Oklahoma in 2 years and being able to build upon more memories, traditions, and times together. But God has other plans in mind. We'll still go back to Oklahoma and continue with our memories. We just have to make them with Ellie, not Ellie and Auntie Moan. We love you and we miss you, Auntie Moan. That's for my sister.
Motz's daughter, and Mona was my Auntie Mona, and that's what we called her growing up. I was asked to find a scripture, and I looked a long time for a scripture and found one that I thought would fit. So I'd like to read the scripture and then talk about it. I found a scripture in Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 1. A good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death than the day of one's birth. In the first part of the scripture, a good name is better than precious ointment. And Mona J. Motz did have a good name. She was a Motz. And everybody else has talked about qualities of a Motz. And she embodied all of these. Being a Motz meant that she loved music. She could play a trumpet, and she had a beautiful singing voice. And I can hear her singing in my mind. Being a Motz means thirsting after knowledge and being a lifelong learner. Mona was a doctor who used her lifelong learning and knowledge to help bring babies into the world, and something I always appreciated about her is that she was always learning and up on current events and just knew so much. Motzes are generous, as my dad talked about. Mona opened her home to her family and friends and gave to others without expecting anything in return. And finally, being a Motz means having a quick wit, a great sense of humor, and an infectious laugh. And whenever I hear anybody mention Mona Motz, then her laugh just comes into my head, and it was infectious and made everybody laugh around her. I bring up the qualities because they, like I said, they go along with the scripture. A good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death and the day of one's birth. And she did have a good name, and I believe that the day of her death did bring many good and happy reunions with the loved ones who had gone on before her.